My father, a man named Richard, always told me I was a hopeless case, a boy with no aptitude for success. He couldn't have been more wrong. Shortly after that dismissive remark, my name was plastered across national news headlines. I, Ethan Miller, had been named one of the youngest entrepreneurs in the thriving New York City financial sector. The silence at our annual family gathering in Austin, Texas, was deafening when I arrived in my Lamborghini. I'm 24 years old, and I bootstrapped a financial technology firm from the ground up in the vibrant city of Miami, Florida. Where I grew up, success was equated with physical toil and sun-baked skin. Richard, my father, owned and operated a construction business for 32 years, judging a man's worth solely by the calluses on his hands. When I opted for a career in finance instead of following in his footsteps, the disappointment in his eyes was a profound wound, deeper than any foundation he ever laid. For 3 years, I dedicated myself to developing a sophisticated algorithm, capable of forecasting market trends with greater accuracy than established financial giants. Nights, weekends, every spare moment was spent hunched over my computer, while my friends were out enjoying life. My father would regularly pass my room, shaking his head and muttering about kids wasting time on screens. Each comment fueled my determination to prove him wrong, adding hours to my already relentless work schedule. Last month, during a family dinner, I overheard him tell my uncle, "Mark, Ethan will be back slinging hammers by summertime." That boy couldn't sell ice to an Eskimo. I remained silent, finishing my meal, helping with the cleanup, and returning home to finalize the most significant deal of my career. I spent my youth watching my father grow his construction company, from a single pickup truck to a fleet of 20. Every summer, starting at age 12, I worked alongside him, hauling materials, mixing concrete, and enduring the relentless Texas sun. He instilled in me the value of hard work, but somewhere along the line, he conflated hard work with sheer physical labor. When I was accepted into the prestigious business program at the University of Texas, his reaction was barely noticeable. "College boys think they're hot stuff until they enter the real world," he'd said, handing me a measly $50 for expenses. That was his farewell gesture. My mother, Eleanor, was a stark contrast. She discreetly slipped me $750 she'd saved from her nursing salary, whispering, "Go make something of yourself that brings you joy." She never uttered these words in my father's presence. During my sophomore year, I created an algorithm that impressed one of my professors. "This could revolutionize how everyday people invest," he proclaimed. I dropped out the following semester to pursue my vision. When I called home to explain, my mother wept, while my father abruptly ended the call. For the next 2 years, I subsisted on instant noodles, working from a cramped apartment with 2 roommates. Venture capitalist after venture capitalist rejected me, citing my youth and inexperience. I printed each rejection email and plastered them on my wall, not as motivation, but as a reminder of those who doubted me. However, my roommate from freshman year, David, remained a staunch supporter, bringing me food, proofreading my pitches, and never questioning my potential. "You're the smartest person I know," he'd often say. "Just don't forget about us regular folks when you hit it big." Meanwhile, my father's criticism grew increasingly pointed. At Thanksgiving, he introduced me to his clients as my son still finding his way. At Christmas, he suggested I apply for a foreman position at his company, implying my tech endeavors were a failure. I noticed how he abruptly changed the subject whenever I tried to discuss my work, interrupting me to comment on a neighbor's perfectly manicured lawn, never once showing any interest in my progress. On my 24th birthday, I received an email from Redwood Capital, one of the largest private equity firms on the West Coast, offering to license my technology exclusively for $18 million. I read the email 19 times, the coffee in my hand growing cold. I called David first. His joyous scream forced me to pull the phone away from my ear. Then I called my mother. She cried again, but these were tears of pride. I didn't call my father. Hopeless case, no aptitude for success. That night, in my hotel room, I received a text from my cousin Michael, the only family member who showed any genuine interest in my project. "Just saw the Forbes article. Holy crap, Ethan, you're famous." I opened my laptop. There it was. My face, my company, my story splashed across major financial news outlets. 24-year-old dropout lands 9-figure deal with West Coast giant. The article mentioned my age repeatedly, as if it were the most remarkable aspect of my achievement. I closed the laptop and gazed out at the San Francisco skyline. The anger and hurt were gone, replaced by a sense of clarity. I knew exactly what I needed to do. The next morning, I walked into a Lamborghini dealership, dressed casually. The salesman initially dismissed me until I mentioned my price range. 2 hours later, I drove away in a vibrant yellow Lamborghini Huracan, not because I craved a flashy car, but because I needed to send an unmistakable message. I didn't call before driving home to Austin. I knew my father's annual 4th of July barbecue was underway, a lavish affair where he showcased his success to clients, employees, and extended family. I timed my arrival for precisely 2 o'clock, when everyone would be gathered in the backyard. As I pulled into the driveway, the roar of the engine drew attention. Before the car even came into view, I parked beside my father's beat-up pickup truck, a vehicle he'd always held dear, and took a deep breath. This wasn't about revenge. It was about finally being acknowledged. I stepped into the backyard, carrying nothing but my car keys. The conversation ceased as if someone had pressed pause. My mother gasped. My father stood at the grill, spatula midair. "Sorry I'm late," I said, approaching him. Traffic from San Francisco was brutal. He quickly recovered, putting on his practiced client smile. "Well, look who decided to show up," he said, clapping me on the shoulder a little too forcefully. "Whose car did you borrow to make such a grand entrance, son?" The guests chuckled. "I didn't. It's mine," I said quietly.
Got it yesterday.
"Right." He nodded, winking at Uncle Mark. "And I bet you're buying a yacht next week."
More laughter.
I pulled the title from my pocket and handed it to him. His expression transformed as he read it. He carefully folded the document and returned it. "Must be nice to have wealthy friends who let you borrow their toys," he said, turning back to the grill. "Grab a plate. Your mother made her famous potato salad." Throughout the afternoon I attempted to have a meaningful conversation with him, but he repeatedly evaded my attempts. When I mentioned the deal, he switched the topic to construction contracts. When I tried explaining the technology, he suddenly needed to restock the cooler. When his business partner inquired about the Forbes article, my father interrupted. "Don't believe everything you read, Pete. Journalists embellish everything these days." By evening, most guests had departed. I found my father in his office, reviewing paperwork as he always did after a party.
"Dad, we need to talk about my company," I said.
He didn't look up. "There's nothing to discuss."
"You got lucky with some computer program."
"Don't think this makes you special."
$18 million isn't luck," I stated calmly.
He finally looked at me, his eyes narrowed. "You know what built this family? 40 years of back-breaking work, not sitting in a room pushing buttons, not making up numbers on a screen." He pointed to a photograph on the wall, a picture of himself at 20, standing beside his first truck. "That's real work. That's real success."
"What I built is real too," I countered. "Is it?"
He leaned forward.
"Let me tell you something, Ethan. I've seen your kind before."
"A flash in the pan. You'll blow through that money in a year, and those Wall Street sharks will discard you when they're done. And then where will you be?"
"Back here begging for a job."
"And I'll have to explain to everyone why my son couldn't cut it in the real world." I left his office without responding. In the kitchen, my mother was washing dishes. She turned, drying her hands. "He's proud of you," she said softly. "He just doesn't know how to show it." I shook my head. "No, Mom, he's not proud. He's threatened." The next morning I received a call from Michael. "Richard's telling everyone your deal fell apart and you lied about everything. He says you rented that car to show off." A chilling certainty settled over me, not anger, but unwavering resolve. I spent the next week in Austin staying at a hotel downtown. I met with lawyers, financial advisors, and my growing team. But in the background I heard the whispers about my father, about me, about my company. David texted me. "Your dad stopped by the apartment looking for you, asking about where the money's going." My aunt called. "Richard told everyone at church that you're in some kind of legal trouble with those San Francisco people. Is everything all right?" Even Amelia from Redwood Capital reached out. "Just checking in. Someone claiming to be your father called our office asking for details about our agreement." Obviously, we didn't provide any. I drove to my parents' house on a Tuesday afternoon, knowing my father would be at work. My mother let me in, her nervous energy palpable as she made coffee. "Mom, what's going on with Dad?" She sat down, clutching her mug. "He's worried about you. That's all. Worried enough to tell people I'm a liar. Worried enough to call my business partners." She looked down, You have to understand. Your success, it challenges everything he's built his identity around. That's not my problem. No, she agreed quietly. But he's making it your problem. She hesitated. There's something else. The business is struggling, has been for years. The new construction firms are undercutting his prices. He can't compete. The revelation hit me harder than I expected. Why didn't he tell me? Pride, she said simply. The same reason he can't celebrate your success. In his mind, if he admits your way worked, it means his way failed. I left my mother with a promise to resolve the situation. But as I drove away, I realized the problem ran deeper than I'd imagined. This wasn't just about my father's pride. It was about his fear. Fear that I represented a future with no place for men like him. A future where his hard work and traditional values meant nothing. That evening I contacted Uncle Mark, my father's younger brother and business partner. We met at a local bar. He remortgaged the house. Mark told me, staring into his beer. 3 years ago, put everything into the business. New trucks, new equipment. Trying to keep up with the big companies. It's not working. Why are you telling me this? Mark looked up. Because yesterday he asked me if I thought you'd be willing to invest your computer money in the construction business. He's planning to approach you about it. I leaned back. He doesn't believe my success is real. But he wants my money. He believes it's real. He just can't admit it. Mark sighed. Look, your father is a proud man. He built something from nothing, but the world changed. And he didn't. On my way home, I drove past my father's business. The lights were still on. I parked across the street and watched him through the window, hunched over paperwork. For a moment, I saw him clearly. Not as my father, but as a man running out of options, clinging to a fading past. I realized then that his attacks on me weren't just about resenting my success. They were about using me to justify his own failure. If my way was wrong, then his way wasn't failing. It was simply undervalued in a world that no longer prized traditional methods. Need to discuss a business opportunity. Dinner tomorrow? 7 p.m. Yes, I didn't go to dinner. Instead, I spent the day putting my plan into action. First, I called Amelia at Redwood Capital. I need information on construction firms in the Austin area. Specifically, which ones are acquisition targets, and which are expanding. By noon, I had a list of the 3 largest players in the region. By 3, I had meetings scheduled with 2 of them. Next, I contacted a commercial real estate agent. I'm looking for properties suitable for a tech incubator, preferably in Austin's old industrial district. The following morning, I met with Colossus Construction, the largest construction company in the state. The owner, Robert Johnson, was aggressively expanding. We've had our eye on Langford Construction for a while, he admitted after I explained my interest. Prime service area, loyal customer base, but Richard won't even return my calls. What if I could change that? I asked. By evening, I had a written offer. Colossus Construction would acquire my father's company for $1.5 million, more than double its current market value, with a 5-year employment contract for my father as a regional manager. His employees would retain their jobs with improved benefits. I also had a lease signed on a 20,000 square foot warehouse space that I was converting into the headquarters for my new company. I was bringing my operation back to Austin. The final piece fell into place when I hired Michael, who had recently graduated with a business degree, as my chief operating officer. Are you serious? He asked, when I made the offer. I've never managed anything. Neither had I told him. But you believe in what we're building. That's what matters. 3 days after missing dinner with my father, I still hadn't responded to his increasingly irritated messages. Instead, I walked into his office unannounced, carrying a folder. He looked up, anger flashing across his face. So you decided to grace me with your presence. After standing me up, I placed the folder on his desk. This is more important than dinner. What is this? Your big investment in my company. His tone was mocking. No, it's an acquisition offer from Colossus Construction. They want to buy Langford Construction. The color drained from his face. You went behind my back. I went ahead of you. I corrected. The business is failing, Dad. You and I both know it. This offer preserves your legacy. Your employees keep their jobs. You get to stay on as regional manager with profit sharing. So that's your plan. Sweep in with your Wall Street connections and take over the business I built. His voice was rising. I shook my head. The business you built is dying. This saves it. He stood up, trembling slightly. Get out. There's one more thing, I said, reaching into my jacket. I placed a key on his desk. "This is for you." He stared at it. "What's this supposed to be?" "It's the key to my Lamborghini. Consider it a gift." His eyes narrowed with suspicion. "I don't want your charity." "It's not charity. It's an advance." I headed for the door, then turned back. "The offer expires in 48 hours. After that, Colossus approaches your competitors. Think about your employees, Dad. Think about Mom." As I walked out, I heard him pick up the key. The next morning, I got a text from my mother. "He drove the car this morning. Didn't say a word about it, but he drove it." By evening, my father had called Robert Johnson at Colossus Construction. 24 hours later, they had a deal in principle. I watched from a distance, remaining silent, as my father signed away the business he'd built over 40 years. He looked smaller somehow, sitting at that conference table, but when he walked out, the keys to my Lamborghini still in his pocket, his shoulders were straight. 2 months later, I stood on a makeshift stage in my newly renovated headquarters. Around me were 250 people, my employees, local business leaders, journalists, and family members. My father stood in the back, arms crossed, still uncomfortable in such settings. "Today we're officially launching Apex Analytics," I announced. "Our mission is to make financial technology accessible to everyone, not just the major firms. And we're proud to be doing it right here in Austin." Applause filled the room. I continued. "We're also announcing our first local partnership. Apex is investing $3 million in Colossus Regional Holdings, the newly formed parent company of several construction businesses, including the former Langford Construction." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. My father's head snapped up. "As part of this investment, we're launching a technology initiative to help traditional service businesses compete in the digital economy. And I'm pleased to announce that Richard Langford will be heading this initiative as Director of Traditional Industries." The room erupted in applause. I looked directly at my father for the first time. His face was unreadable. Richard has built something valuable over 40 years. Knowledge that can't be encoded into an algorithm. Experience that can't be learned in a classroom. By combining his expertise with our technology, we're not replacing the old with the new. We're building something better than either could be alone. After the presentation, as people mingled and celebrated, my father finally approached me. "You planned this all along," he said. It wasn't a question. "I planned to build something meaningful," I replied. The rest simply fell into place. We looked around at the bustling activity, employees moving with purpose, the sign bearing my company's name on the wall. "Your name's not on the building," he observed. "Neither was yours," I said. But everyone knew who built it. For the first time since I was a child, I saw a glimmer of respect in his eyes. Not approval. We were beyond that. But recognition. One builder to another, he extended his hand, and I took it. "The Lamborghini stays with you," I told him. "Consider it a signing bonus." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "I already sold it. Bought a truck instead." He paused. "And I put the rest into your company's stock." Local tech firm partners with traditional industries, creating 200 new jobs. My father and I weren't close, and probably never would be, but we'd forged a different kind of relationship. Once a week we had lunch to discuss the traditional industries program. He'd started bringing in other business owners, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, men like him who were being left behind by technology. They don't need handouts, he told me during our last meeting. They need tools that make sense for them. And I listened, truly listened, because he was right. The partnership with Colossus Construction had surpassed everyone's expectations. My father's expertise, combined with our technology platform, had expanded their business across 4 states. The same employees who once worked for him now held stock options and enhanced healthcare benefits. My mother had finally quit her nursing job and was traveling, something she'd always dreamed of but couldn't afford. "Your father actually took a cooking class with me in Italy," she told me, laughing during our weekly call. Can you believe it? David had joined the company as our marketing director. Michael was excelling as COO. We'd hired 40 graduates from local colleges, creating a talent pipeline that didn't require them to leave Austin for opportunities. As for me, I'd shifted my focus from self-validation to building something enduring. The $18 million deal, once my ultimate goal, was merely the opening chapter of a much grander narrative. Remember whose shoulders you stand on. I walked to the parking lot, where my modest sedan was parked next to my father's new truck. No luxury cars were needed anymore. We'd both made our points. Driving home along the water, I reflected on success, how I'd once defined it as proving my father wrong, and how I now saw it as something we were building together, each in our own way. I'd achieved my revenge, but not as I'd envisioned. Not by humiliating him, or taking away what he valued, but by creating a future expansive enough to encompass his past. By building something neither of us could have accomplished alone. That felt like true victory, not against him, but for both of us.